sometimes on the farm, we have challenges due to connectivity. Now, what is TELUS doing to improve connectivity on our farm?
Sure, Mitch. I think it's probably first important to recognize how important connectivity is. And I think this point's been echoed by basically everybody since the whole pandemic started. The ability to connect is important, not just for our economy, but it's, our kids are going to school now online, and keeping us linked and actually sane is now happening because we're able to connect with each other remotely.
Mm-hmm.
When we launched TELUS Agriculture in the fall, we knew that improving rural connectivity would go hand in hand with the success of the agriculture sector. And if farmers and ranchers and other agribusinesses were not able to access high-speed internet, then our own business wouldn't be able to grow. But fundamentally, I guess our success is built on your success.
Right.
So we are investing across Canada, but primarily in Alberta, British Columbia, and Eastern Quebec, to build out rural networks, and we're doing that in a number of different ways. But the commitment is there, and I think TELUS wants to be a proven partner, not just to Canadians, but in particular to farmers.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what's needed to connect rural Canada?
That's a great question, Mitch. There are three main technologies currently being used to improve connectivity for rural Canadians. The first is fiber copper wires. So these are laid in the ground and they're used directly to connect your home or your business. The second is wireless networks. So these are the networks that our mobile phones are connected to. And the third is satellite technology. In order to connect all of these, in order to connect all of Canada on an accelerated timeline, we need to use all three technologies, and each have their pluses and minuses. For example, fiber provides the fastest and most reliable internet, but it's also the most expensive and it's the most time-consuming to install.
Okay.
Wireless is much faster to deploy, but it can also have a greater variation in speeds. But there's also huge potential. With 5G around the corner, we'll be able to run incredible technology off the wireless network. And the last one, satellite technology, it's still pretty new in this space, and it'll be likely most useful to help connect and close those remaining gaps for hyper-rural communities like those without road access. It's also worth noting that satellite technology is still several years away from being deployed for the average Canadian.
Okay, that's great, but farmers need it now. So how can you guys do it sooner?
For sure. So I think it's important to understand that there are a few roadblocks to connecting rural Canada. And the first is related to cost. It's extremely expensive to install connectivity infrastructure, and the investment payback periods tend to be upwards of 20 years. Telecom companies need to partner with federal, provincial, and municipal governments to help create economic business cases to connect rural communities. The best thing we can do is align funding across the different levels of government. This will help all telecom companies, both big and in particular small, to make the best business case. The more we can do to encourage provincial governments to table their own connectivity funding programs and have those align with what the feds and the municipalities are doing, the sooner we can start building.
Okay.
The second, and this is probably the most important, is related to something called spectrum. You'll recall I mentioned earlier that wireless networks or mobile networks are faster to deploy. The other thing that I didn't mention is they're actually more cost effective, and when done right, they can offer incredible speeds. If you want ubiquitous connectivity over the next 5 years, wireless networks are actually fundamentally, they're the key.
Okay.
Wireless networks run on a resource that's called electromagnetic spectrum. And basically, if you have a device that has an antenna, think like your car radio or walkie-talkies that your kids might play with, they're sending and receiving signals on a specific spectrum band. Cell phone and wireless high-speed modems work exactly the same way. They connect to the nearest wireless tower by sending and receiving data over a specific band of spectrum. Because spectrum is a public resource and it exists everywhere all around us, it's regulated by the feds. The feds decide who can use which spectrum band for what purpose, and then they charge licensing fees for use. Telecoms companies bid on spectrum in auctions in order to secure enough capacity to support their wireless networks. So here's the rub. On our rural networks in Alberta and British Columbia specifically, we've run out of spectrum. We've basically deployed all that we own, so we can't, or we struggle to add new customers or increase our speeds. There are other telecoms companies who also own spectrum in rural Canada, But for business reasons, they've decided only to focus on deploying in urban Canada where the customers are. And they basically use their rural spectrum undeployed. And this really hurts rural Canadians and farmers in particular.
Okay.
If TELUS had access to this spectrum, we could virtually overnight light up faster speeds on our rural networks in Alberta and British Columbia, providing farmers, families, and business operating there with about 50 megabits per second download speeds, which is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we can fix this problem, but we actually need the federal government to act. And we can fix it in two ways. The first is by implementing strong use it or lose it conditions on all spectrum licenses. No telecom operator should ever be allowed to own spectrum in rural Canada and sit on it for 20 years without putting it to use for the people who live and work there.
Right.
And the second is about auctioning more spectrum sooner. Access to more capacity will help increase the speeds in rural Canada, not just from 25 megabits per second to 50, but even up to 100 and past that. These speeds will be game changers for the agriculture business, looking to expand its use of technology both on and off the field. So if I had to leave you with sort of two asks, it would be this. When you're talking to the government, talk to them about spectrum, talk to them about use it or lose it, and make sure it's being prioritized for rural Canadians.
Okay.
And then the second is about funding. The best thing we can do is align our funding opportunities. This maximizes the money that the government and the private sector spends and delivers better results sooner.
I think this could give farmers the boost of confidence they need to stay better connected. And I think it's very important during seeding and harvest, but as well as during the off season for grain marketing and other things that farmers need to do. And thank you for your time. And I think this could be game changing for agriculture.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitch. It was nice talking to you today.
Thank you.